with Exxon Media's new program. This Well, good morning, Kicksters. Welcome back to the Morning Kick for Thursday. Hey, this is going to be a really good episode, particularly if you've ever considered doing some advertising on Facebook. And considering right across Australia, around about 67% of Aussies are spending daily, serious time, whether it's on their device or their computers, scrolling through Facebook. Great opportunity for you to get in front of that audience. And today we're going to invite onto the show one of the specialists at Exxon Media. This is James Hodson. James is our performance media specialist. James, thanks for joining us on the Morning Kick this morning.
Thanks for having me on, Andrew.
Hey, it was really good to be able to invite you on the show and look at this whole area of paid traffic. I often use the analogy that if you're at Disneyland, you can wait a long time in the queue trying to get on the ride, and that's kind of like trying to wait for your keywords to rank on Google. Or you can pay for one of those fast passes and you can go right to the front of the queue. And that's kind of what we do with paid traffic. But I thought, let's get an expert in. Can you give us a bit of an introduction? What is this paid traffic, or what some people call PPC?
So PPC is a model of advertising where you pay per click. So essentially, whenever anybody clicks on your ad, you are charged by either Google or Facebook or LinkedIn for that opportunity. And that's pretty much the crux of paid traffic. So it's pretty much like turning a tap on to a degree.
Now, one of the most common questions that I get when people ask about it, they've heard about Google ads, they've heard about Facebook, and even LinkedIn having ads. They're concerned about how much it costs. Can you give us an idea of how the actual clicks are worked out? Like, do I know when I start how much it's going to cost me?
So that's a great question. From a Facebook perspective, we have a rough idea about how much inventory costs. But depending on how good your ad performs from a CTR perspective will determine how much it costs for the click. So generally, when getting started, we'll have a rough idea. And then as the campaign gets going, we'll very quickly be able to figure out what it's costing you. But ultimately, we care more about the outcome than the click. So even if a click costs $20, $30, if that results in a business outcome worth thousands, then that is a click well worth having. So yeah, cost per click is a good metric to determine how well your campaign's going, but at Excite, we generally look at the outcome to see how we're going from there.
So let's have a talk about some of the different options. Can you just give us a brief understanding about the difference between Facebook and Google in terms of where you might use those two ideas? And then we'll spend a bit more time on Facebook today.
Yeah, absolutely. So Google is different from Facebook in the perspective that you're essentially putting your business in front of someone that's searching for an answer. So they've gone to Google and they've typed in some keywords, and then you get to choose specifically what kind of keywords you want to show for. So the user is in the mindset of looking for an answer. Facebook is a little bit different. Facebook is part of a disruptive advertising model. Therefore, you're intercepting someone's attention throughout their day, particularly with some sort of creative or anything like that to get their attention. So how this plays out in terms of a campaign performance perspective is typically you see a lot higher click-through rates, people clicking on Google ads versus Facebook. Like a really good Facebook ad might only convert 3% of everyone that sees the ad. And that's just because of the context in which it's being shown.
So I guess it's really important to understand your market and who you're trying to reach. Is that one of the benefits of Facebook, being able to talk to just the right person?
I would actually say that Google is probably better from that. But where Facebook is better from the perspective is that Facebook's AI is extremely powerful. In terms of, I think Facebook has the most powerful human behavior prediction AI on the planet. So if you feed Facebook the necessary data and targeting that you want, Facebook will go and find your customers over time. So from a Google perspective, you know the context in which your ad is showing. You know that someone searched in XYZ and they go to a SERP page, like a search engine listing page, and you know exactly who you're up against and what you're targeting. Facebook, you're up against every little bit of content on their feed. So the benefit of Facebook, though, is that it's AI, and Facebook has the most complete data set on your customers in the world. So when you go with Facebook, that's what you're leveraging. If you don't have the own data on your customers, Facebook does. So you're essentially paying for the opportunity to leverage that.
And I guess that's the common concern of most business owners, is that whether it's a retail shop or the people that are surfing on their online store, they kind of think they know who the customers are because I've kind of seen them wandering down the aisles, but we really don't know their full profile, age, interests, where they live, etc., unless we ask them a lot of questions. I guess Facebook's done a lot of the hard work for us.
Yeah, it has. And its AI has gotten a lot better over the last couple of years. However, that being said, we still start all campaigns with some foundational questions, mainly from a ad copy perspective. So as mentioned, you only get about 2 to 3% of the people that you show your ad to actually get to click. So in a way, the foundational questions of who your customer is, what their pain points are, why they should buy your product, all that kind of stuff is really more geared towards around the copy and getting people to click. From a targeting perspective, we definitely do utilize some of that information. However, more often than not these days, we're often requesting a customer list, or we're trying to get the Facebook pixel on your website well prior to us starting a campaign, so the AI starts to learn who your customers might be.
Now, we're using a few terms that people may not have heard of before. So AI, if you haven't heard, artificial intelligence, it's basically the Facebook computers doing the thinking for you. But you've mentioned Facebook Pixel going onto a website. What's that and how does it work?
So Facebook Pixel is essentially Facebook's listening device for the internet. So essentially, there's a value exchange between businesses and Facebook. Businesses will install the Pixel on their website, which means to put this listening device on the website. In exchange for putting the listening device on the website, you're then able to leverage Facebook's database. So when a user comes to your website, the Pixel will listen and see who they are and match them to their Facebook profile, enabling you to essentially build lists of everyone who's been to your website. And you can even get more granular. So if they've engaged with a bit of content, et cetera, et cetera. And what this enables you to do is to take these lists of people and then target them directly on Facebook. And a more advanced use for a pixel is that you can then take everyone that might have become a customer in the past 180 days per se, and then you can go and tell Facebook to go and find the closest 1% of people to this. So you can leverage all your current customers and get Facebook to start to learn who they are, and you can use that for targeting. So you don't even need to necessarily understand in depth what their interests are, even though I highly recommend it from a copy perspective. But yeah, that's what the pixel opens up. So it's a value exchange between Facebook and website owners. Website owners put it on there, right, so they can then use it for targeting, and Facebook obviously gets to use the data.
There's some really good stuff there, and obviously a lot to learn. Now, I guess there's some areas where we need Excite Media's expertise to be able to help us do these campaigns, get it right. You've mentioned the copy and setting up the campaigns. What's something that the business owner can do that makes them better prepared to start advertising online, and particularly to start advertising in Facebook?
I think often the thing that I try and figure out the most when talking to business owners is what makes their product or service different from the competitors. Because when it comes down to running ads, you're not just competing with other people in your industry if they are running ads on Facebook. You're actually competing with every bit of content on someone's feed. So not only do we have to make the ad extremely appealing, but we also have to make it appeal to the right person and trigger that need or want to leave Facebook to go and look at your product or service. So that hook, what makes your product different, that pain point that you're addressing, that you solve for someone, is the most important thing for owners to have defined. Following on from that, there's the other basic steps, as mentioned, making sure that you get the pixel on your website as early as possible. Even if you aren't necessarily ready to do Facebook right away, it is an asset. You essentially are storing all of your visitors' information onto a data warehouse on Facebook, ready to go for whenever you want to use it. So number one, I would say it's about understanding the pain point or what you're trying to solve and what's the hook for your product, so that at Excite Media, we can then take that and leverage that to get people to click on the ads and convert and do the outcome we want. And secondarily, I'd say would be get the pixel on your website, even if you aren't ready to do Facebook right away.
James, let's have a talk about some of the types of customers that are ideally suited for actually doing advertising on Facebook. Can you give us a couple of examples that you've seen where it just worked? It was the right audience, it was the right business, it was the right product or offer, and you just saw it take off. Maybe a couple of examples that we can think of industry-wise or business-wise.
Absolutely. So as you mentioned earlier on, 17 million, so about 2/3 of Australians are on Facebook. So 17 million Australians are using Facebook daily. So from that perspective, I nearly think Facebook can work in most circumstances. However, where I've seen it work the best is really on a B2C aspect. So business to customer, consumer. And examples would be, I'll give you a unique example of one that I was quite surprised about recently, which was in the healthcare industry. So we were selling items that were to help users with mobility. So the target audience for that was about, I would say 50, 65 plus people that had lost independence and were using like mobility scooters, et cetera, to improve their mobility in their life. So the assumption that a lot of people have is that the older generation is not on Facebook. That could not be more wrong in this instance. We use Facebook to promote, product ads and then also some testimonial ads for this healthcare worker for healthcare business, sorry. And I would say that more than half of the inquiries that came through were from people aged 65 plus. So that's probably an example of one recently where I guess it really ticked for me that, everybody uses Facebook. And when I mean everybody, like any platform that has about 70% of the population on it is doing really well. So from the perspective of who should use Facebook, I would say nearly all businesses could use Facebook to some degree. It definitely works better from a B2C perspective, so business to consumer. However, you can also use it from a B2B perspective as well. There's been some recent examples where we've used that. While the targeting is not as strong from like targeting people with job titles and everything like that, if you train the Facebook AI to learn who your customer is, it will be able to match data points that you wouldn't even think of. So from that perspective, I'd say B2C is where it works best, but it nearly can work in all circumstances at the moment. As mentioned, Facebook has the most complete database on Australians to date. So because of that, that literally means that you can test nearly any kind of business on Facebook to see how effective it might be. I would recommend it actually, because you just never know what might take off and what might convert really well.
It's interesting when you think about the fact that a few years gone by, if you wanted to reach an audience, you might have bought a mailing list. And that mailing list would have cost you so many hundreds of dollars per 1,000 people to get those names. And it's almost like Facebook is saying, actually, we've got the list. We actually know the profile of the list. And if you work with us and give us information that you've got, together, we can actually get you in front of the right people. So a great tool to be had. Have you seen another success story that you can think of that's worked recently?
Absolutely. So another one would be security doors. So, and just the home improvement niche in general, to be honest, especially this year with COVID, the home improvement niche has been going absolutely nuts on Facebook. And I think that's because consumers are at home, have been at home more this year, therefore their home is more important, as in how it looks, how it presents and everything like that. So another example would be security doors. We've been driving leads for this client of ours for about $5 to $10 per lead for a
That's
ticket
incredible.
item that is, the ROI on that is huge. So, but we're leveraging the need for people to want to improve their homes, and the ads have that. We're really showing really good looking products in situ, and that's getting people to stop swiping. And then our copy is then taking them onto the website, and then the website is then converting them. But the other example would be, security doors lately, getting leads for about $5 to $10.
James, one of the things I've seen as I talk to small business owners is that often they have a go at doing Facebook ads themselves, or they have a go at doing Google ads themselves. and they come away very disillusioned. They say, it doesn't work, or I wasted a lot of money. My credit card was just going mad with money going out the door and no results. I think one of the biggest problems is they set and forget and don't fine-tune their campaigns. And that's something obviously we take an interest in, is getting better results. What are some of the things that Excite Media is going to do for a client that a client may not be able to do for themselves to improve those results?
Well, from my perspective, the decision to use an agency like Excite Media and us is that you're improving your chances of the campaign working. And it's like if you were to invest your money in the stock market yourself. You can succeed, absolutely. However, if you were to go with a hedge fund or a fund manager that her job is to day in, day out live in these markets, you're going to have a lot greater chance of success. The same as the decision to go with an agency like us for Facebook. You know, we're in the platform day in, day out. We're working across different industries, different niches. We're working across different audiences. So we get to see what works and what doesn't work. And that's really the power of appointing an agency. And what we do at Excite here from a optimization perspective is that we're regularly looking at ad performance. We're regularly looking at how users are then acting and performing on your website. And we also have a fair few strategies involved to get as much data into Facebook as possible to leverage the AI. So whenever doing a Facebook campaign, it's always an ongoing project. See, back in the day with media, in the Mad Men days, and probably not too long ago, maybe 20 years ago, with TV campaigns, billboards, and everything like that, all the work was front loaded. So you do all the profiling and targeting, you have your relationships with the media companies, you buy the media, and then you're done. There's nothing else left to be done after that. However, in the day of digital and Facebook, you do all this work up front, getting the ads ready, getting your target audience, understanding your target audience and what will make it work. And then you press publish, run, and then it's an ongoing project from there. It's really a game of incremental wins, just improving things as you go along. So testing ad copy is probably a great example. We quite often will test different headlines, different copy, not just from a slight variation perspective, but from, does emotional copy work better than, product-led copy? Does an active call to action work better than a passive call to action? And the truth be told, it varies depending on who your audience is and the industry that you're in. So that would be the main reason I'd say that you go and work with an agency, is that we just have breadth of experience across industries and we're working in this day in, day out. It's not to say that you can't succeed doing it by yourself. It's just that you have a higher probability of succeeding if you work with an agency like us.
Some great advice there, and I think you're right about those incremental changes. The old days, if you were printing an ad, or you may remember when Yellow Pages, you printed it for the year, and if you got anything wrong, that's it. You're waiting till next year before you can make a change. The great thing about working with an agency and experts like James is that they are looking at things day in, day out, to be able to make those incremental changes. And you know what it's like, if you are actually trying to point towards true north and the wind blows you off a little bit, it can only be a few degrees and you're heading in the wrong direction. So working with somebody like an agency can make sure that you pull yourself back to get on track. James, it's been fantastic to have your expertise on the Morning Kick this morning. And if anybody would like to know more about the team at Excite Media, then I encourage you to go along to our website. James, I'm going to ask you a question in just a moment about your profile. So if you're ever on the excitemedia.com.au website, which you can find here, then nice and easy, you can also go to our team page and meet the team. And on that page, you'll see all of our amazing profiles. And this is where James is listed amongst all of the team that work at Excite. James, tell us about this profile shot. What exactly are you reading here?
So that's a book called The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. Because the industry that we work in is so fast-paced and quite stressful, one of the ways that I like to wind down at the end of the day is by reading fantasy. So that is one of my favorite books, The Name of the Wind. I would highly recommend it. Patrick is an amazing writer and has a really unique writing style. So yeah, when asked to kind of think of what's something that I really like, that's the first thing that came to mind.
Absolutely brilliant. Well, it's been great to have you on the show, and I'm not going to get you back. We'll try and get a booking in where we can talk more about Google in the coming weeks or months. So watch out for that. And listen, if you've enjoyed today and what James has had to offer, I encourage you to share this video. Well, we're going to be back next week with a very interesting guest, and that is because we're going to be talking to the oldest Excite Media staff member. Now, I actually thought I was the oldest Excite Media staff member, but we're going to find out about the guy that's been there the longest. Listen, if you want to know more about what Excite Media can do for you, including websites, paid traffic that we've spoken about before, lead generation, search engine optimization, do go along and have a look at excitemedia.com.au, and we'd love to be able to have a talk to you. We can introduce you to the specialists who make a difference in our clients' businesses. Look forward to talking to you next Thursday when we find out about the history, and also we'll have a look at the future of Excite Media.